in coming to the movement, in coming to realization that there were others?
Well, I pick up on that phrase that Harry used, my people, is something that has been a real guiding notion in my own life in the movement. Now, I'm by temperament a joiner. I like to get into organizations and do things, and if the gay movement had not come along, I would probably be active in the conservation movement today. And let's face it, the gay movement's a lot more fun. But I heard about the gay movement by reading what was a very seminal book of the time, The Homosexual in America, A Subjective Approach, by Donald Webster Corey, and I was fascinated by the idea that a book on the subject could be published, a book by a homosexual. I contacted the author, who lived in New York City, and he told me about the newly formed Mattachine Society. So I had the usual 2 weeks vacation, and for the first time in my life, I bought a plane ticket and went up in the air and went to the West Coast and landed in the offices of one of the gay organizations in Los Angeles with a rucksack on my back, and I said, well, here I am. And they said that there was a gay women's organization that had been formed just the year before up in San Francisco. So I bought another ticket, got in the air again, and went up to San Francisco and contacted the Daughters of Bilitis. And they were just starting their publication called The Ladder. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, I was invited to one of their meetings, and for the first time in my life, I was in a room together that was not a bar with about 15 other lesbians, and it was it was a stepping stone for me. It was a wonderful entree into the movement. But I must say that at first my vision of what we could do was very vague and very formless. Unlike Harry, who I think had a very clear sense of what should be done and what could be done, my feelings, like that of a lot of other people who just come into the movement for the social contact, for the companionship, for the feeling of belonging, mm-hmm. I didn't have a very strong idea of what could be done. At the time, it just seemed enough that my people were getting together and talking about our mutual problems. And I don't think I really developed, let's say, I got into the movement in 1958. I've been in the movement for 25 years now, and I don't think I really got a strong, coherent philosophy until the beginning of the 1960s, when, as John D'Amelio has pointed out, there was a distinct change in the temper and tempo of our own movement, sparked in large measure by the advances of the Black civil rights movement. Right. And suddenly we began to see that the problem of homosexuality, which is what we were organized around, was not our problem, but society's problem. That gay is good, in parallel with black is beautiful, that we had to not politely ask for a few crumbs of privilege from the table, but go out and demand rights in the courts and in other forums where we could get them. And the whole atmosphere changed, and I began to develop a very coherent, strong, positive feeling.
We have actually a film clip that's really interesting. Lily Vincennes did a film called The Second Largest Minority, and it's almost like a home movie of one of the first public gay rights demonstrations, and you're in it. I'd like to roll a little bit of the film, and maybe you can tell us what it was like to be there on that day in 1967,
I think?
1967,
or 67.
Outside Independence Hall in Philadelphia, one of the earliest, I think, gay picket lines. And was this an organization that sponsored the demonstration, or was this?
It was sponsored by a group of gay organizations on the East Coast, and it was done as what we called the annual Reminder Day on Independence Day, July 4th, to remind the public that there is still a significant minority of Americans who do not benefit from the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness
Barbara,
that are guaranteed us. There I am handing out leaflets, and the drill was you smile and you smile and you hand out to everyone, whether they take it or not. So there I am handing out leaflets.
Well, were you scared?
Oh, yes. It was, there were very few people who really felt comfortable about being in one of these demonstrations, because you just didn't know what the consequences could be, whether you might lose your job because your employer saw you on a television news clip, or somebody saw you in the street. It was rather scary.
It's interesting to look at a film like that now from the perspective of today.
If you could believe that the very first gay pickets had maybe 10, 15, at the most 20 people who could afford to get up in public and do this. Mm-hmm. And yes, it